Hello, I'm Ayala Deutsch, the 2020 president of the International Trademark Association, and you are listening to IP Fridays.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of IP Fridays. Our names are Ken Suzanne and Rolf Claessen, and this is the podcast dedicated to intellectual property. It does not matter where you are from, in-house or private practice, novice or expert. We will help you stay up to date with current topics in the fields of trademarks, patents, design and copyright, discover useful tools, and much more.
Welcome to the 113th edition of IP Fridays. I am Rolf Claessen, co-host of this podcast, together with Ken Suzanne. And first of all, I have to say sorry for taking a break so long. It is completely due to my private situation. Today's guest is Ayala Deutsch, president of INTA. But before we jump into the interview, I have some news for you. The European Patent Office has announced that they have a new regulation for opposition proceedings. They are postponing opposition proceedings with physical attendance until 15th of December 2021. Until then, they try to have all parties agree on video conferences. And starting from the 4th of January 2021, the parties no longer have to agree, but video conferences are probably then just mandatory. So I'm quite happy about this because I just got a summons to oral proceedings that is scheduled for 3 consecutive days, and I'm very happy that I can do that from the comfort of my office. Coming Monday, the largest annual gathering of intellectual property professionals is starting, the INTA meeting, and I'm very happy and proud to have Ayala Deutsch, the president of INTA, as a guest on today's podcast. I'm very excited to have our guest Ayala Deutsch in our IP Fridays interview today. If you don't know who Ayala is, she is currently serving as the Executive Vice President and Deputy General Counsel of NBA Properties, Inc. But more importantly, maybe for our listeners, she is currently serving as the President for the International Trademark Association, INTA. And I'm very grateful that you're on the show today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk with you.
Okay, maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself. Where did you come from? I see you have a degree from New York University School of Law. Where did life take you since then?
Well,
just briefly.
Yes, exactly. I graduated from New York University Law School in 1989. I had an interest in litigation, and so for the first part of my career, I did IP litigation and counseling at a law firm in New York, Cleary, Gottlieb, Steen and Hamilton. And then almost 23 years ago, I joined NBA Properties in New York, which is the marketing and licensing arm of the National Basketball Association. I joined as an in-house IP attorney. I've been there ever since. And in my current function, I am Deputy General Counsel of this commercial entity where I continue to see the global IP function, as well as the commercial lawyers, business and legal affairs across our different businesses and regional offices.
Wow, very impressive.
Well, I'm never bored.
I believe so. This year must have been very difficult for you because you are leading the largest professional organization in the trademark world, the International Trademark Association. And Corona, the COVID situation might have been very difficult for you. So what changes, how did you react to this COVID situation, and what changes did you bring underway within the INTA?
Yes, of course, it's had enormous impact on the organization as it has on all businesses and all people. A lot of uncertainty. But I think what that's done is it has driven the necessity to be innovative and creative about ways to move forward under these different circumstances. And so in INTA, we have had both our staff and our volunteer members working really hard at coming up with new ways to make sure that our members are engaged, to make adjustments to our events and our programmings, to support efforts. And, it's interesting, one of the strategic objectives of INTA's 2018-2021 strategic plan is to embrace innovation and change. Little did we know in 2018 what we would be dealing with, but that part of our strategic plan includes providing innovative, valuable services to our members. And the circumstances have really motivated us to become more creative and I think even more embracing of change than we ever planned. So it's been challenging, but it's also been exciting to see how INTA has responded to that challenge.
Yes, very, very good that you found ways to basically to bring this organization forward in these difficult times. And one of the things you did was moving the annual meeting to November. Originally, it was planned to be in Singapore, and I was very much looking forward to seeing Singapore. I was never there.
Me either.
But unfortunately, the COVID came, and then nobody was able to go to Singapore anymore. And you decided to move the annual meeting to November. In fact, it's starting next week, at the time then when our listeners can listen to this episode. Maybe you can give our listeners an overview of the different format, the new format, and the program, and of course the highlights. What are the highlights of this year's annual meeting?
Of course. I would start by saying, in respect of innovation and change, we actually had INTA's first ever virtual conference in June, and that was a conference looking at the role of brands in society. And that was a precursor to taking our 2020 annual meeting and leadership meeting, which is now also a fully virtual event. And so there is a lot to look forward to. It has a lot of the same elements as our prior in-person meetings, but those elements are offered in a new way and with new features that kind of reflects innovation in format and in how we're using our virtual platform. So, for example, the educational program at the meeting is built around 12 different themes, tracks for 12 different themes. And of course, registrants are welcome to pick and choose whichever programs they want, but these programming tracks can help guide registrants to sessions that meet their specific interests or their specific needs. So some of those tracks will cover familiar topics, perpetual topics like anti-counterfeiting and brand protection. But there will also be regulatory issues, professional development, and some forward-looking topics like innovation and the future of IP, managing your brand in times of crisis, brand commercialization and brand value, and then diversity and inclusion, which again, very important part of INTA's mission and very much a focus of kind of everyone these days. I will also say there is a Mandarin language track that's exciting, that's focused on developing issues in China. And that track is going to take place on November 18th in the China-Singapore time zone. So we really are trying to make this as convenient as possible for registrants all over the globe. The educational program will be live, but also available on demand. So for everyone with very busy schedules, you don't have to miss any of the sessions you're interested in. And that hasn't always been true in the past. There have been conflicts with meetings or double sessions. So that's exciting. And then there are also watch parties where even though we can't all gather together in Singapore, registrants from the same time zone can get together and view a recorded version of the session and chat about it live. So that's one aspect, the programming, I think exciting as it's been at prior meetings. Another really important part of the annual meeting is the networking. Registrants will be able to meet and share contact details and set appointments with their business associates, and this will all happen virtually. And we're also going to have virtual versions of some, activities that we have done in person in the past, including speed networking, table topics, and our platform can even facilitate one-on-one or group meeting rooms, for example, for corporate members to meet with their outside counsel. We're not forgetting the social events in different time zones and related to sports and other experiences. And then the last component, also very much a part of the annual meeting, is the exhibit hall. And we have it this year. It's just virtual. So it has special hours for appointments. Exhibitors will have new ways to kind of engage with registrants and provide information and demonstration of their products and services. We have more than 50 exhibitors this year, and so that will be robust as well. And then, in terms of the highlights, from my perspective, obviously it's all exciting, but I would highlight the opening ceremony. As always, we have some good speakers lined up. There is a diversity and inclusion track, as I mentioned, and a women's leadership workshop. The Women's Leadership Initiative was launched by INTA earlier this year to promote the advancement of women in the IP field, and we're going to have some workshops on that. And then one thing that I think will be very interesting is a town hall on the IP practice of the future, and this will discuss the work product of 3 think tanks that INTA had established to think about the IP office of the future, the IP law firm of the future, and the IP in-house group of the future. And those reports are fascinating, and we're going to have a town hall, one for each time zone, to discuss those results and kind of look in our crystal ball a little about where IP will be taking us. So I know that's a lot, but we have a lot. It's going to be a really great meeting.
Wow, that sounds really exciting. Especially for me personally, the last point that you mentioned with the town halls for the IP practice of the future. I assume that topics like artificial intelligence are also discussed there, or like moving in-person meetings to virtual meetings with clients and these kinds of things?
Yeah, the role of technology is incredibly important. And of course, INTA looks at that from a substantive standpoint, what 3D printing or artificial intelligence data means from a substantive legal perspective. But these think tanks and this town hall will really look exactly as you anticipated, look at how technology will play such an important role in the practice of law for the IP offices in the public sector, as well as the firms and companies in the private sector.
Yes. Earlier you mentioned also that networking is very important during the meeting, and that is actually the one thing that I enjoy most, meeting all the foreign associates that we work with in one place and having personal meetings with them, meeting them in the evening at the different receptions. And but you are saying that you try to also achieve that goal, that people can meet each other easily, not only personal appointments, but also you provide meeting rooms, and you have the speed networking, of course. So how do you implement this? Is there like, for example, how do you do that? Is there like a room for speed networking where people just go and then they sign up for different spots in the speed networking, or how do they meet? For example, when I walk into the big halls at a usual annual meeting, I also occasionally just meet new foreign associates by chance, and I get to know them just because they were there. But
Yeah.
How can we meet people during the INTA meeting in a virtual way?
Yeah, it's a good question. There are actually a lot of different ways. I would start off by saying we have a platform that is focused on networking called INTA Connect. It's a 24-hour networking platform that is available only to the meeting registrants, and it includes a registrant directory and an appointment system. And speaking of artificial intelligence, it actually uses AI to match meeting registrants based on their profiles and their interests and their time zone preferences. And so because of the use of AI, the more you as a registrant engage with it, the more it understands your preferences and kind of it improves your matching. It's actually been live already. And so I would encourage all residents to start using it as soon as possible and as much as possible as we head into the meetings. Part of INTA Connect and the virtual appointment system also includes, and that page describing the firm services and list all the registrants from the firm attending the meeting. And you will then be able to schedule meetings with between 2 and 50 registrants in this business hub space. And again, can control schedule by time zone and duration. Speed networking is there. It's actually increasingly popular, and there will be sessions, moderated video meetings of speed networking with up to 12 participants. And the sessions will take place at many different times, many different time zones. I think, as I mentioned earlier, we will still have table topics, and they're actually many of them and very popular. We have 171 table topics with more than 2,050 seats. And we're coordinating the table topics this year with the educational track topics. And this year, many of these table topics are being moderated by corporate members and some by representatives from IP offices. So those will be very interesting. And then a few more we have for brand owners. They can meet and interact with their global in-house counterparts in an informal setting, and that is called corporate meetups. So there can be 1-hour video meetings with 12 brand owners, again, offered at convenient times. There are virtual corporate meeting spaces that will allow members to conduct business with their outside counsel and vendors and partners. Those meeting spaces are available from Monday, November 9th through the 20th. And so putting some of that availability before the meeting starts will allow our corporate members to hold their meetings early and kind of avoid overlap. And then just a couple more. Social events, again, there will be different, but there will be opportunities for networking in a social activity. Experiences, as I mentioned, sports-focused opportunities, tastings, my own personal favorite, and wellness, which is all the more important in the age of COVID. And there will even be a grand finale, a dance party with a live DJ. So looking forward to that. And then lastly, again, open beginning on Monday, is hospitality. And it's like the hospitality area we have had at prior in-person events. This is the meeting, I think, in what you referenced, that's most like those unplanned meetings and interactions we have when we're in person. So registrants can enter one of 3 virtual buildings including one that's open 24/7 to accommodate different time zones. And you can join video conversations with other registrants. Every table, so there are many tables, functions as an independent video conversation with the people at that table. So although the capacity is very large, the groups in which you can join the conversation are more intimate. And enter this hospitality area, you can use a search function to see if any of colleagues you know specifically are in the area, and if they are, if you want to join their group, or if you spot someone of interest, you can invite them to your table. And then there's an agenda functionality that lets you, preset a specific meeting time with other registrants in one of the hospitality areas, again, much as we did in person. And whenever that time is agreed upon, you just join a table in the hospitality area and use the video chat function to start your meeting. So it's actually quite amazing. And I will say, as I learned more and more about the functionality, it was, to be honest, way more than I anticipated it would be.
Yeah, it sounds very impressive.
Yeah, so, I think so.
So the registrants have a lot to look forward to. That's good. And they can already use that functionality, as I understand you.
Yes, the platform is available to them, and then some of these specific elements like hospitality will open beginning Monday. So
there is also one topic that also always comes to mind when I think of INTA is the committees. And I want to advertise a little bit the committees, because you are always looking for people who engage in the committees, and actually they are really important and bring the profession to a new level by being little think tanks, let's say, for different topics. So why don't you introduce the concept of the INTA committees and how people can engage with these committees?
Yeah, it is the absolute engine of INTA. INTA is a member-driven organization, and all of the members who participate on committees are volunteers. They are serving on our committees in their spare time, and they are incredibly dedicated, very knowledgeable, very engaged, and they are our most important asset. I will say I've been involved with a lot of industry associations, bar committees, and INTA has unlocked the secret of member engagement on substance better than I think any organization has. So the committee members collaborate on specific committee objectives for each of the committees that align with INTA's strategic plan. Currently, there are 35 committees, and those are divided into 3 groups: an advocacy group, a resources group, and a communications group. In addition to the committees, there are also various project teams, perhaps to tackle something a bit more ad hoc, as well as advisory councils. So the INTA volunteers work closely with INTA staff, and they're analyzing and addressing a very wide range of issues related to trademarks and other IP. Some examples of what we're doing through our committee work: we're obviously advocating for trademarks and brand owner rights. We're developing resources for our members, for other stakeholders like trademark office officials, and for the public. We are communicating and implementing our strategic initiatives. For example, corporate social responsibility and diversity and inclusion. We started a new committee this year called Brands for a Better Society that's designed to help move forward that strategic initiative. And of course, we plan educational programs and events like the 2020 annual meeting leadership meeting. And as I said, INTA has really figured out how to make this work. So as a volunteer at INTA, you get a real meaningful opportunity to contribute and to make a difference. Of course, you can raise your profile in the broader IP community. and you also get to do things that maybe you may not get to do in your actual job. That can include taking a leadership position eventually with a committee or subcommittee to manage a group of people that you might not have that opportunity in your job. I would say for me, one example, when I was a much younger lawyer and just beginning my involvement with INTA, I was on the amicus brief committee, and there was an important amicus brief INTA was preparing to file before the Supreme Court of the United States, and I worked on it. And when the brief was submitted, my name was on the brief. And I mean, for a litigator in the US to have your name on a brief going to the Supreme Court was an unbelievable professional opportunity. And I had that thanks to INTA. So it's really a very rewarding experience. To your last question, how can you join? We have 2-year committee terms. We're currently in the first year of a 2-year term. So the next committee selection window for the 2022-2023 committee term will open in June of 2021. All INTA members will receive a notification by email with full instructions. And if you are eligible to apply, I encourage you to do it. It's really, really interesting and rewarding.
Yes, I heard so from lots of committee members.
Great.
Yes. I have one question that is not really related to INTA, but rather to your everyday other job, let's say. Because you mentioned that you are heading the IP efforts of the NBA properties. How did the COVID situation change your job? What are the most important challenges in these times? And especially one thing that would interest me is, did the situation with the counterfeit goods change during COVID?
Yeah. So a lot of the challenges are not unique. You know, I'm trying to manage our team remotely, which is challenging. We're trying to understand the new procedures, ranging from remote notarization, which is fascinating, to, you know, the enforceability of digital signatures. So just how the remote work of everybody has kind of affected us. And I think, you know, in terms of counterfeiting, what's interesting and perhaps not surprising, one of the trends we've seen, the NBA produces licensed face masks, with some proceeds from that going to COVID-related assistance causes. And we have seen really huge amounts of counterfeit face masks. And that's not just the NBA. That's every brand. Counterfeiters are always opportunistic. So we've definitely seen that. And then, you know, more broadly speaking, from the INTA perspective, there's no doubt counterfeiters are taking advantage of the COVID-19 crisis more broadly, selling counterfeit equipment, counterfeit PPE, and even counterfeit medicines. You know, the same week that the WHO declared the coronavirus a pandemic, Interpol made 121 arrests in 90 countries, seizing more than $14 million in counterfeit pharmaceuticals. Oh. So you can see the intersection of the need for medicine and the counterfeiters who try to take advantage of that. I think there's also been consumer change. While we've all been in lockdown or remotely working. So enormous increases in e-commerce purchases, even with consumers who hadn't previously used e-commerce frequently, growth of e-commerce purchases in previous categories that previously had not been the subject of a lot of e-commerce activity, like groceries. So that's been happening. And then I think, you know, there's an increased interest in how companies and their corporate social responsibilities are engaging in appropriate and effective supply chain management. So I think all of this presents opportunities for the counterfeiters for sure, but also opportunities for us to work together to remove counterfeiters from online marketplaces, to implement stronger penalties and sanctions for counterfeiters, to really educate consumers how to shop safely online, and more so to educate consumers about the role of trademarks in their lives, to make consumers realize these trademarks are very important indicators of source and quality, and that allow consumers to make quick and confident and safe purchasing decisions. And counterfeiters, again, seek to take advantage of that. And of course, first and foremost, to educate people on the to educate people on the health and safety risks of fake medical products, particularly in the time of a pandemic.
Yes, very important point. Thank you. So we are already nearing the end of the interview, but before we go, can you point out like the 3 things that our listeners should take home from this interview, maybe especially about the annual meeting?
Sure. So we'll start with the annual meeting. I really do think it's going to be one of our most memorable meetings in a year where INTA was focused on innovation. This meeting is perhaps the best example of that innovation. And while a lot of things have changed over the course of this year, with respect to the annual meeting, it's still the IP event of the year, not to be missed. Incredibly important chance to connect with the IP community, and that is still the same. So that's the first thing I would say. The second, just reverting back to our previous topic, I do think everyone in the global IP community needs to come together to collaborate in the battle against counterfeiters. It really is an impactful way that we can help in our roles as brand professionals, help the world deal with this health crisis, and even more important, I think, than ever before. And then maybe the last point, I think, again, validated by our experiences in 2020, is to look at this crisis from a long-term perspective and understand not only the challenges that may result, but also the opportunities that have been presented. And, those are 2 sides to a coin. But it's certainly the way INTA is looking at this. We aren't going to try to stay the same coming through this crisis and out of this crisis. If anything, we're even more excited about change and innovation than we were before, where it's really been a catalyst for our rethinking how we can best serve our members and bring them value. And so we're reinventing ourselves a little bit to adapt to a new world. And we're evolving with great confidence and anticipation into the future. And I think that's all a positive out of what is a very negative experience.
Yes, for sure. So if people still have questions about INTA and the annual meeting, where can the listeners learn more about INTA and the annual meeting?
Well, they should go to the INTA website at inta.org. And I will say, for people who have previously been on that website but haven't been there in a while, it is amazing. We've been working on what we call a digital transformation for a while. The new website was launched in June, and it's fantastic to work your way through that for a lot of reasons, but it will also have all the information about the annual meeting.
Thank you so much for having time for us and our listeners. I'm very grateful that you have been on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Okay, so
That's it for this episode. If you liked what you heard, please show us your love by visiting ipfridays.com/love and tweet a link to this show. We would be so grateful if you would do that. It would help us out to get the word out. Also, please subscribe to our podcast at ipfridays.com or on iTunes or Stitcher.com. If you have a question or want to be featured in one of the upcoming episodes, please send us your feedback at ipfridays.com/feedback. Also, please leave us a review on iTunes. You can go to ipfridays.com/iTunes and it will take you right to the correct page on iTunes. If you want to get mentioned on this podcast or even have comments within the next episode, please leave us your voicemail at ipfridays.com/voicemail. You have been listening to an episode of IP Fridays. The views expressed by the participants of this program are their own and do not represent the views of, nor are they endorsed by their respective law firms. None of the content should be considered legal advice. The IP Fridays podcast should not be construed as legal advice or legal opinion on any specific facts or circumstances. The contents of this podcast are intended for general informational purposes only, and you are urged to consult your own lawyer on any specific legal questions. As always, consult a lawyer or patent or trademark attorney. Copyright 2014, all rights reserved.